So, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're based. Today with us one more time I have Nicolas. You all remember him, the Excelsior data scientist that we started this sort of podcast together. And today we're just going to have a freelance sort of conversation.
It's been a while. First venue was outdoors, now it's a bit more closed, but the message remains the same, I think.
I'm sure it does, and it does. We got the armor of God behind us, we got some non-copyrighted music playing, so it's all good, right?
Yeah.
So I've been thinking the past few days, and I kind of wanted to start off with the role of feminism into the workplace, interacting with people that have embraced this woke feminist approach. And from that point onwards, lead this conversation into multiple parallels. Potentially, I want us to sort of touch upon the topic of religion, probably at a second scale. So for those watching, this is going to be separated into two parts, and take it from there. So, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a good pipeline. We'll see where it takes us. You mentioned the role of feminism, so let's start from there. I think that I want to give a bit of a more abstracted response to it. I think over the last few years I'm a bit against labels for the sake of labels. What do I mean by that? You could argue that do you really need a sort of philosophy that teaches you how to treat the other gender? Why do I mention this?
Started pretty deep.
Yeah, because I mean, the goal should be a form of mutual self-respect, right?
An understanding. Yeah.
And understanding. So I think that common sense should be more common. What you do, what you don't do, what you say, mean what you say, and say what you mean. So whenever something starts getting a bit more popular, a bit more commercial, I think this is where it takes a tangent and a bit of a bad road. Why do I mention this? It's important, first of all, to know what you want and what you want to achieve and what you want to do with the other person. So, do you really need a sort of philosophy for, I wouldn't say for your own rights, but I think every capable human being understands what respect is, what is wrong, what is right, to a certain level. So, whenever such movements come up, I'm a bit skeptical into what exactly the purpose of this is.
Is your problem the movement though, or the commercialization of the movement?
I think a bit of both, because we live in a day and age where attention is a big currency.
Yeah.
It's a huge currency, and there's a form of, there's a message out there that whatever you do is wrong. So you open up YouTube or TikTok, I don't have TikTok, or whatever, or Instagram, and basically whatever you do is wrong. So this is why you're drinking water or juice the wrong way. Do you know that you don't know how to walk? So there's this popularization of life coaches, of people that immediately destroy you and tell you that what you're doing is wrong, and I have the secret way and secret methodology, and it's very pervasive everywhere. And I think that a lot of people going through a lot of stuff, they need this sort of anchor. So this is why I believe this message resonates so well.
Do you believe it resonates because by default women are more emotional beings than men are, so that message is drawn more personally to them? Do you agree with the statement that they are more?
Yes, I think they're a lot more emotional than men. I think it's part of the differences between men and women. I'm not saying it's good or bad, because there's different strengths, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but limitations that each gender has, and it's part of the reason why they complement so well.
Right.
I think I would say it's a bit of yin yang, the white and black, darkness and light and darkness. So I think it's part of the reason why the role of a mother is also very important, because the amount of, in a way, emotional maturity, maybe it's not the correct phrase, that women display in the motherly, figure or persona. It's something that no man can replicate. So a lot of jobs taking care of children or sick patients, or something that has to do a lot with human interactions, I think they can connect in an emotional way where it's more difficult for men, because I believe a lot of times we're more straightforward. I wouldn't say necessarily logical, but I would say that we have a very different viewpoint that doesn't anchor so much at the emotional side.
I think it's more about the way you comprehend the world. So the way we boys tend to comprehend the world is a little bit more darker than the way women tend to comprehend the world, and that has a direct impact into how we react to it vis-a-vis how they react to it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth for that, because if you take a very baseline understanding or viewpoint on the interaction between men and women, so confrontations between men are more likely to escalate to something physical, and whenever you're talking to another man, there's always at the back of your mind a point that if you talk too aggressively or if you say the wrong things, it can escalate to a physical argument. And I think it was Jordan Peterson that had also mentioned this. I had seen it a while back, and I agree completely with it. Whereas for women, it doesn't get to that point, even interaction with other men. So it's a lot more common for women to escalate situations in confrontations with men, because it won't lead to the same physical altercation, whereas if it was a man that was doing it to another man, it was more likely than not to lead. And I think this part of physical altercation, and what you can in a way get away with behavior and attitudes, leads a bit to a more carefree style, because you don't have to pay so much attention to your actions, your thoughts. Women are more of the sensitive gender, so there's a lot more care and protection, whereas men don't have that part. And if you don't have that part, then this tolerance, in a way, this protection, it leads you to having to be, on edge more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this plays a big role in what you say.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I completely understand with it. And then on the other side of the coin, and I'm going to get into my experiences in a short while, and then we can discuss your side of that story too. You see feminism impacting the workplace, not in a nurturing way, not in a way where women can be the best that they could be, but in a very, very varied and corrupt way. So I say this often, and I'll give you some insight into my experience. I mean, you know most of them, but I suppose most of the viewers don't. There's no hard feelings at the end of the day, but what I do frequently wish for some of these women that I have worked with is that they end up, having boys. It's a common wish I have for them. Like, no hard feelings, what bygones be bygones, but I do sincerely hope that they end up having boys.
I think what you're saying, it's a bit of a karma, or a bit of a situation where it's very difficult to comprehend the situation unless you're going through it, or you have someone very close to you going through it. So from my understanding is that what you're saying, I've thought about in the past as well, is that someone that mistreats you just for the sake of your gender, for example, being a man in the workplace, or because they've had bad experiences and they're projecting into other people, which
Right.
is unfair to do in either way. Either for a man to have bad circumstance or situation with women and projecting, or the other way around. The only way they may be able to truly understand it is if someone very close to them goes through the whole situation. Now you mentioned feminism in the workplace.
Yeah.
I would say that again it goes a bit back to what happens when a lot of these movements start getting very commercialized or picking up steam. in the end of the day, someone who cares about their value as a person and what they can truly produce, I think those type of movements, they do not represent them. Because, for example, you would want to achieve things because of your skill, your hard work, meritocracy, not because you're guaranteed in a way extra opportunities because of the movement. Because this spoils everything for everyone. Because if you got promoted just for the sake of being a man or just for the sake of being a woman, instead of your skills, instead of your work discipline, whatever that entails, then people will catch on to it and they will say that, you know what, it's a very valid concern that you got to where you are not because of who you are as a person, but because you're represented by a specific movement that corporations want to join the fad.
What if they understand it a little bit too late? And I'll give you an example, right? So, in one of my past experiences, I was doing a 7/7, helping with different accounts other than my own accounts, growth, etc., etc. So, at the end of the day, I was competing with my direct female supervisor over a position, let's say, in one of their offices abroad, right? And the argument was that it wasn't, in fact, me and the other guy that opened up our respective offices, me for the Middle East, him for Italy, but it was her that was accountable for developing these roles. So you have someone that was completely incompetent in that role, wasn't even there on these days because she would post stories and all the social media being out on Sunday or Saturday, yada, 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 yada. Someone completely incompetent that wasn't even supervising during those times, taking the glory for the hard work of two males, it could have been females, but in this case it was males, right? And justifying it as a career progression for herself. Naturally, down the line, she did go where she had to go. She was given a whole office to manage. She bankrupted that office, but I mean, the argument is that she did spend 4, 5, 6 years financing a 180K lifestyle. So really, I mean, I hear what you're saying about incompetence in the workplace and meritocracy, but it to my understanding is that a lot of companies, for the sake of not being called anti-feminist or anti-woke, which is slowly dying out, thankfully, but anyway, not being called anything of that sort, are willing to compromise and accept that these people are there for X amount of time until they eventually have the whole system collapse.
Yeah. Look, my experience is that a lot of times, either for example, doing a sport or in the workplace, what I've observed is that a lot of times there are some women that maybe project a sort of insecurity in a way. Once they have either a role where they're supervising men, that I've noticed more often than other male counterparts, or for example in a sport that's more physical, they put, I won't say they put a lot of effort, but they put an overwhelming amount of effort when it's not really needed. I don't know if I'm describing it correctly. So, for example, we're doing something together and we're having a decent tempo. What I've observed is a lot of times I may keep it very slow, but the other person becomes very hyper-aggressive, as if they want to prove a point to that part. But I would also say, again, part of the reason why I keep going back to, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm taking a look at the movement as a whole, is that today it's feminists, not today, for a long time it's feminists, what you mentioned, the other agenda, there's a lot of agenda that it basically feels like it gets recycled, the same movement, but there are a lot of core structures which are the same. So, for example, rewarding more incompetent people in the workplace.
Very common.
Or doing whatever you can for the sake of bureaucracy, having individuals which produce a lot, not get rewarded as much. And it's funny because I was reading this pamphlet from the CIA that's, I think, from the 30s or 40s. It's called Simple Sabotage Field Manual. and basically describes what agents should do in a country in order to slow and sabotage things. And there's a section, I think, chapter 11, productivity in the workplace, where if you read it, and if you've ever been part of a semi-large organization, and you see the amount of bureaucracy, you would think that everyone there is a foreign agent. For example, it says that you should try to do your tasks as slowly as possible, ask questions when there is no need to ask questions.
So every corporate meeting ever.
Insist on a huge number of committees, no less than 5 members inside, rewarding people when they don't deserve to be rewarded, sending back work which is perfectly done, and accepting less than perfect work. So I would say the poems change in a way, but it's a recycling of, promoting based on an agenda instead of meritocracy. Personally, if someone's better than me in A, B, C, D, I don't really care, as long as that holds true. And I think a lot of people at the end of the day will respect that part. If you're better than me because you're better than me, for me that's the end of the story. What a lot of people get sour, and it even has an impact in delivery of work, is when the opposite holds true.
Yeah.
So you get promoted not because you deserve it or because of your hard work, but because of who you know, because you're playing into the politics of this age. And you see that a lot of companies have no backbone, and there's a lot of virtue signaling, because as soon as the movement changes flavor, or the wind blows the other way, everyone forgets these values. You were seeing it a lot with the woke agenda once Trump got elected, that a lot of people that, for example, in the Gay Pride Month, they were putting their flags in social media, they stopped doing it once he got elected. Or for example, the same corporations, if they had the Middle Eastern division, they would never do that. So a big part of what's happening is that people do something for the sake of doing it. I would say in order to cave into a vocal minority or the flavor of the politics at the time. But once that changes, their attitude changes, and you can really tell who is intellectually dishonest by that. Because if you believe in something, you believe in it whether the climate is correct or whether the climate is wrong, right?
You're getting into the territory of religion too soon.
I would say, yeah, religion, or, at the end of the day, it's, if you believe in something, it means nothing if you're not willing to defend it, right? So everyone can have an opinion, but would you have that opinion if I applied pressure on it? This is how you test the foundations. And why do you believe what you believe? Is there a backbone behind you? Is there a building block? Or again, are you changing your opinion based on pressure, based on a lack of foundation?
Well, look, it's a solid argument. It's a very solid argument. What drives me personally, Matt, is the fact that, you see all of this and you are judged for reacting into it. So you defend a principle, you defend your belief, you defend an injustice by calling for justice. And it's not the injustice that is being served or mitigated or altered or corrected. It's your justice, your call for justice, that needs to shut the hell up so it can meet the injustices. And you see that across the scale through nearly everything. It's far more rational for you to shut the hell up. You're expected to shut the hell up rather than react into it. You see some random douche that within 4 years gets 6 promotions back to back, and I'm not saying this just to feminism, which is why I said douche. I meant the guy, right? 6 promotions back to back, responsible, first job, completely incompetent, no real experience, just with pure ass kissery, making from associate to VP within 4 years, for example. And you're meant to sit there and just look at it, accept it, and not react to it. So it's not the injustices that hurt as much as the demand for accepting them.
Look, there's no way to say it cleanly, but it sucks, and that feeling sucks, because It's unfair. What's unfair sucks. Objectively, everyone would say it sucks. Getting passed over, or feeling that your work is not rewarded when when you essentially should be judged by your work, right?
Well,
Because
in my case, it was rewarded. It's just that the rewards went to someone else that wasn't actually doing the job.
well, I wouldn't call it a reward then.
Well, for her, it was a reward.
Yeah, that feeling sucks. There's no other way to put it. I don't have a clean state of mind or something you can do to help you deal with it. I mean, you listen to a lot of things. For example, think about the bright side or look at the bright side. No, I want to get angry, I want to get pissed off.
Yep.
It's a valid feeling, you can't suppress your emotions, and there's a lot of things which suck terribly. One of them is that part, because work is not charity, right? You're giving something, your work, and you're exchanging it for part of your time, your soul, whatever you may call it. So essentially what you want is a validation for what you have given.
Yeah.
So once you see that I've given X, Y amount of my soul, my body, my time, and I haven't gotten what I want or what I feel I deserve, it's a very difficult feeling to manage.
There's two recent train of thoughts that I've heard as a potential counter-argument, and one is that in this economy, everything is going to hell, so you might as well just do your job and don't let it affect you, which is very convenient to say but very difficult to do. And the second train of thought is continue fighting for your beliefs. Eventually you will get something that matches your style and character. Both those train of thoughts are train of thoughts I disagree with. I don't think that being in an environment for 8-9 hours a day plus maybe overtime, OT or whatnot, and seeing these injustices and just not reacting is something that is going to be good for you. Personally, I internalized a lot of it, so that's when I gained all the weight. That's when I doubled down on smoking. That's where I got the health issues that came up, etc., etc. So one train of thought internalizes a problem for me. The second train of thought is seeing it on a day-by-day basis kind of leads to either becoming part of the problem or ultimately, again, ending up in internalizing potential irrationalities. So I don't think that's a path, any of those two paths, a path that I can follow, but it is too prevalent school of thoughts that are telling you to face any problems that work in that way.
I think a big truth is that regardless of the amount of motivational videos you watch, which a lot of success stories, it's very common to pinpoint something someone successful did.
Yeah.
But for every success, there are a lot of people that have tried the same and it didn't work out. So it's a bit of a confirmation bias there. And a big truth is that chasing the ball doesn't guarantee you will reach it, right? Hard work can bring you to a position where you're qualified enough to get it, but there's a lot of external factors that also go into it. The wind might blow very hard, and as you're about to reach the ball and it goes further away. There's a lot of examples you can give, but it's a sour truth that a lot of times you can put a lot of effort into something and then you basically don't get the reward you would expect.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different ballgame, but there are some hard truths out there. One of the biggest hard truths for me is that feminism has ruined families. It has ruined the way women behave in the workplace, and I'm not talking about irrational stuff like getting groped on or whatever. But they have ruined the way they interact with male counterparts. Another harsh reality for me, for example, is that there are some things from the whole left-wing movement that when you apply them into the workplace make sense. I've been in scenarios where I've had a bad female leader come in and unionizing within quotation marks, but aligning with other people in positions of power, team leads, managers, etc., has brought in a better result than what the capitalist approach would have been or the right-wing approach would have been, and that's conflict. So a hard truth for me is also that there are some very basic elements across ideologies that are okay, they can be implemented in day-to-day. It's basically what you say with not overdoing it, no excess. And if you don't have any excess and you don't go into the radical side of feminism, etc., there are some principles that you can adopt and get in and sort of utilize them. And I think, with the exception of religion, because in religion I hold a harder stance against accepting some aspects of some religions, because you give them an inch, they take a mile. But with the exception of religion, when it comes to clean ideology, I think not letting your personal stuff. So, for example, in my case, I've had like 3 or 4 bad female managers who, on their own sake, had different issues. One had an issue because she was obese. The other one had an issue because her daddy was a sailor and he was missing from her childhood. And that, in both those scenarios, the male was the evil entity. But if you don't let these affect you, and thankfully I believe it hasn't, because I've had people I had to mentor and grow that were females, then ultimately there are some lessons that you could learn and adapt into your day-to-day. I don't know how you feel about that.
Look, I think that the more you grow up, and let me say it a bit more precisely, the more experiences you're exposed to, the more the different type of work environments you're exposed to, the more jobs you do. One of the things that becomes clear is that in practice, a lot of theories turn out very differently.
Yeah.
So this can even apply, for example, for a specific job role. So a project manager in company X might be wildly different than company Y and wildly in Z. So people might have different viewpoints on what exactly it means in practice and application. But another thing is that the more you're exposed to it, the more you understand that there are a lot of half-truths out there. There are a lot of, a broken clock is right twice a day, so you might see the worst theory ever, or something which doesn't represent you at all as a person or as an individual or whatever, and it might still contain something that you can attach to. And okay, you mentioned again the role of feminism. When it started in the US, I'm not exactly sure I'm getting this correct, but a big part of being able to, I'll take it a step back before, because I think this was brought a lot because of a woman's right to vote as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was
The suffragette movement, yeah.
Correct. So what people often forget is that a big part of being able to vote in the US meant the ability to get drafted to war. So women couldn't get drafted, so there was a logic behind it that why you would vote for someone if you could vote, but then you would not be called to go fight for the war, so you could eventually vote for your country to go to war but not partake in
Serve in it, yeah.
right? So, and another part, even women in the workplace, is that essentially the output in the economy that occurred is that basically you had a lot more population to tax, right? A bit of an attack on the nuclear family, because now both parents have to work. Because there's a lot more jobs, supply and demands, the money that is given to each job is much lower. So it slowly starts into what we're seeing today in Greece as well, that a lot of times there's families, both parents working, not being able to make enough, a lot of stress permeates the house. This is why I'm saying that a lot of times such movements get commercialized for their own purposes or for their own ways. And it's very important to take a step back and know what you want out of something. And we're taking a stance back and circling back to the original thought that do you really need a movement to define mutual respect to someone? Someone can argue, then why do you need religion? Because it's also a set of morals in a way on how to act. But I'm saying in a more baseline understanding, because I refuse to believe that a lot of people don't have common sense, which common sense is not common, but
It's not common,
it's
no.
not common. But I think a lot of people understand but choose to ignore it. Right?
Or choose to fake it.
Yeah.
Or
It's
just
also-
fake it. Or just fake it. Shifting away a little bit from that parallel, I want to focus a little bit on the job, on jobs in general, because everybody wants to be a millionaire. It's a hard and brutal battle for someone to make it out there. But what's very interesting is that, and I'm saying this because I have interviewed over thousands and thousands of companies. There's many things that could break or make a good job for you getting into it. It could be a bad interviewer. It could be some guy that out of nowhere just borrowed 100,000 from their parents and kind of built a company that through daddy's or mommy's connections went viral and it was very lucrative. So it could be, you're asked a random interview question like, why have you stayed 1 year in that company? That means you're not reliable, so bye-bye. It could be 1,000 things, and everybody is just tackling you in an interview without really the perspective or the understanding. They've already formed an opinion based on what they see prior to even getting to meet you, and that opinion cannot be changed. It can very, very seldomly be affected a little bit, but it cannot really, really be changed. And I think that ties up a lot into prejudices that we have as individuals, whether that be feminism or just individual prejudice. I think generally that in life, the more brutal one's upbringing has been, the more humane that makes them, the more willing you are to give someone a chance, the more willing you are to mentor them, the better of a manager you will be, the better of a human being you will be. That's my personal opinion. And if I see someone that has fought has fought injustices, and if that means, leaving a job or a workplace because it didn't reflect their own ideas, then I respect that a lot more than somebody that has stayed in an environment for 6, 7, 10 years and had to step over people and maybe shut down that common sense that you aforementioned for their own personal gain. But that's just me, and I just want to get your thoughts on it.
You touched on a few points. I would say, first of all, the point where you mentioned that if someone has been through dark times or hell, etc., they might be more likely to understand. It's true, but there's also the bitter truth in that it's not always the case. So, for example, you have someone who his parents were alcoholics. So you have some kids that might turn into alcoholics, but then you have the exact opposite, that they are very against it. So you might have people which have a great amount of empathy in a way, that can understand you, etc. But there are also some people which might totally forget what they went through, or have a bit of a reaction where internally they justify their actions by saying, you know what, because I went through this, I don't care, you have to go through this as well. And I would say in the form of jobs or interviewers, etc., the reality of a lot of individuals that grew up and might be in their 40s now, 50s, etc., 60s, or even a bit younger, is that in Greece at least, they grew up in more affluent times in a way.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase it a bit. Their childhood, not so much, but when they were entering the workforce, a large percentage of them entered into a period where it was very easy to get a job, very easy to make a lot of money from the jobs, very easy to make a lot of money by putting minimum effort. So they have this sort of biased or skewed view of, I wouldn't say hard work, but the amount of outcome you can generate for
Mhm.
the work you put. So you might have a lot of naive individuals which are saying, the younger generation doesn't want to work so much, etc. But if they were entering the workforce at the same time now,
They wouldn't make it.
they wouldn't make it. They would certainly not make a large percentage of the outcome that they made with the amount of effort they put, because you're basically being asked to put a lot more effort in your work for a lot less remuneration and other outcomes. So a while ago you could basically put yourself on a work island mentally, focus just on your work, and over a few years have the ability to purchase one or more properties that would stay in your name. Now it's extremely difficult to do the same thing. So, and we're talking a numbers game, right? I'm sure there are still individuals which have high paying jobs, etc. Everything is more expensive now, but that potentially could still do it. But we're talking a numbers game. A lot more people have the capability to do it, putting a lot less effort.
So, I mean, I've done it, and the amount of stress that came with it and discipline that had to come with it was immense. And
but even in your case, if this was 20 years ago, with the amount of effort you put, you could basically have a lot more.
yeah, we would have been talking about a factory with like 15 apartments. Yeah,
Maybe your own empire or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So, what's the motivation? A while ago, I had a friend that quit the army. He was a permanent member there. And we had visited this location that there were other more senior army
Mhm.
individuals. Uh, my friend hadn't quit at that point, but he was on the
Over
line,
there.
yeah, on the fence. So the other more senior individual was talking to my friend and telling him, what's your rank? This, I remember, if only I could go back to that place. And my friend, he wasn't very responsive, and after these people left, he was telling me, when that guy was at the same position at his age, the amount of perks, salaries, benefits he was getting was insane. So it's as if a lot of these people, they refuse to believe, because I think in a way they will feel invalidated for their effort, because if you tell them that, it would be a lot more difficult to do this now. It brings up a lot of defense mechanisms inside. It's very difficult for individuals to be able to see something like this very objectively. It feels an attack on the persona, where, okay, this is the reality of the situation. No one's saying that people didn't work hard. It's the amount of effort that you put and the amount of things that you could generate was a lot better. Things a lot less expensive, a lot greater purchasing power, less stress overall. So it was very different times. So what you were mentioning before, saying even that gaps in the resume or being at a company for 1 year, what's the reward for loyalty now? A while back I could understand it. Great workplace, salaries, year-on-year increase, buying power. Now, if
Stability is the answer to that. That you have stability by having a job.
yeah, but I mean that things with inflation, things keep on getting more expensive, right? So it feels like we're in a rat race more than ever before. So I understand stability, but if you can't make your basic needs, you need to see something else. If the job isn't fulfilling, because a big part of your work day is the job. So there's a part of it where your needs are being met, but there's another part where your psychological, mental, spiritual needs, whatever you want to say, needs to be met. And for those that might huff or try working at a soul-crushing job, call center, a big example, for an extended period of time, and then coming back with no other choice.
Well, the answer I got to that is that you can find things to do outside of your work.
You need to sleep for 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
You have 8 hours of work, without overtime, because a lot of times you will do overtime. So let's say 1 hour commute to and from work, 10 hours, 18 hours, essentially you have 6 hours. And they're very mentally taxing. So a lot of times, once you're done with it, you need to feel like you have a bit of a control in your life. That you might overeat, you might drink. You need something to calm you down. So if you're being in that situation, and you have to find such other things in order to get you to feel normally again, this pinpoint soul crushing job. Someone might say, "Oh, why don't you find something else?" I think it's a bit of a stupid argument, because it's a bit like going to someone that is homeless and telling them, "Why don't you just buy a
Why
house?"
don't you just buy a house? It's that simple.
It's not that people might not try to find other jobs. Competition, it's difficult. It's not always possible. Sometimes you just need to get through the month, or have something to have your own money to spend. No one would remain in that job if they had something a lot better to do, right? So I understand there's a part of a segment of the population that might be doing these jobs, and they might not care about it. They might not have some personal influence, but there's also a lot of another percentage that might actively look, not get the responses they want. So this is why I'm saying this is a bit of a stupid argument.
Go through soul-crushing interviews.
Yeah, and it's again, it goes back to what we mentioned before, that you open up social media and everyone wants to sell you something, everyone tells what you're doing is wrong. So there's a big monetization that what you're doing is wrong, and if you just did this, a lot of people can benefit from extra discipline, right? But sometimes things aren't fair, aren't going your ways. If we take a very basic example, and there are 1,000 available positions in a country, but 3,000 people looking for work, the fact that there will be 2,000 people that won't be able to find a job, right? Someone might say to that, become so good at what you do that you push out the other competition. Not always the case.
No, sometimes you might be too good.
You might be too good, you might not have the proper connections.
You might be viewed as a danger.
There's a lot of things that go into it. What I'm saying is that it's not just a matter of just hard work or discipline. It's good, plays a role, but there's a lot of demonization, and very easy to feel guilty about things that are outside your control. So we're not God in human flesh. Jesus Christ to be able to predict the future, do everything perfectly, right? So sometimes it's, in a way, what we said before, there are some things that are sour truths and they suck. Part of it is that you might put a lot of effort into something, but
Not get rewarded.
not get rewarded for it. And it feels like you're going back to zero. And if this has continued for a long cycle, it's very difficult to generate the energy to
Keep
move
on
on,
doing it,
because it feels like you're in a boxing ring with your hands tied, getting beaten up over 100 rounds, and people that are fresh coming and telling you, you know what, it's just one round. Why are you
Relax.
reacting? It's not one round, it's plus one round. So
What doesn't seem to, I'm mesmerized by this often, is the fact that personally, again, personal experiences, it's every experience is exactly that. It's a brand new experience, and it's a brand new challenge and a level of challenge. And I usually understand that after the lesson has been learned, but it comes with new challenges. So, on one side, let's say company X, first company, fat, feminist, bad person in general. Perhaps it would have been easier if I had claimed to be gay.
yeah, playing to the politics.
Play into the politics. Company B, perhaps I shouldn't, because I had learned from Company A that I needed to be more voiceful. Company B, maybe I shouldn't have demanded so many stuff and played into the politics a little bit more with a liberal approach. Then you have Company C, which, I don't know, whatever, D, E, F, with the most recent experience being that what matters the most is, the quality of shoes you wear and what you appear to be rather than what you are. So if I appeared to be amazing, I was amazing. if I brought the results without appearing to be amazing, yes, you brought the results, but it was a stroke of luck, for example. So those lessons are very interesting lessons for me in terms of perspective, because well, you gain a lot of insight as you grow, and these are lessons learned that I firmly believe that people that have had plates served to them will not understand until it's too damn late.
You're playing a role when you're in the corporate environment. A lot of times you're asked to put on a mask in order to go alongside with it. It's part of the reason why a lot of times it's very mentally taxing to be there, and why it's so soul draining. You essentially have to do your work, have to play another role. I think it's part of the reason why the older you get, the less patience you have, because this builds up cumulatively. So,
Do you think it's worth it?
I think that's a very difficult question, because there might be people that go through this and get rewarded greatly for it. So they're talking, for them that was the solution, right? Play the role a bit, work hard, get recognized, achieve a lot of part into it. Because they might tell you that every job has its negatives, which is true. So in more corporate roles, you have to put more of a mask. It's part of the game. If you don't want to do something by yourself, then you have other negative things. I think the outcome really depends on whether this was worth it or not, and what you gave for it, right? What did you lose in the process, and what did you gain?
Well,
What shall it profit a man if he gain the world but loses his soul in the process? So, what is the exchange there? If you have a really good balance, it's something that outside of work, I don't know, you've structured your life in such a way that it's decent money, you do it just for the money, you have other things outside. Maybe in your mind you care more about the stability, not so much for the progress, so you don't really mind. I think it could be worth it if you're really driven by wanting to achieve a lot of things, build things, get recognized, all that package. I think this oftentimes turns as a weapon against you, because in those types of environment, people can use it against you or hold it as a piece of cheese in order for you to run the rat race.
well, the way you're making it sound is, this is what I thought of the moment you were saying this, right? That, you're born, you have like the first 4 years where you're like completely unconscious of the world, and then you're thrown into a system where you have to adapt into sitting on a desk, etc., force-fed an X amount of things as education. Then once you're out of that, and most people are out of that system at 17, 18, without any real guidance of what a university is. They're thrown into a university to study some bullshit degree, and by bullshit degree I also include mine. It could be political science all the way to, I don't know, gender studies or history or archaeology. And then they come out of that and they realize that said degree cannot be translated into something that has to do with what you wanted to do. And you'll never be as good as somebody that comes from a Trotskyist-based system, heavily brand-named university. At least that's how employers are going to review you. And you end up doing these soul-sucking jobs, and then eventually down the line you get another company that's a little bit better and you decide to settle. So you give your soul out from the beginning of time, ever since you come into this world, up until essentially your last breath. There are some small periods in between where you justify that differently. I'm working because of my family, because I want to provide, because especially as men. But to me it sounds that the concept of freedom and that is something I have pursued very often, is not actually there. You're not really free. You're just playing a part into a big system. I'm killing you, aren't I?
It's very deep what you're saying. I read this study that it says that essentially after a certain point of money, it doesn't really make a difference how much you make. I don't remember what the number was. A few years back, when times were more stable, I think this was around, if you're making net 60k in Greece or something like that. The reason I'm mentioning it is that a big part of freedom is the financial
Yeah.
freedom that you have, because there's a huge part of the stress that goes away with your what will I do, how will I survive. You're given a choice to really pursue what you might want to do if you don't have the financial obligations taking a big part of your mind inside it. But it's a very big topic, because without that, it's a bit of a dice roll. So will you get lucky enough to be put in a few positions that you will manage to get some financial responsibility? How will things play out in your life? So I think it's a very dark psychological topic in a way, because
And then you have things like the ego, right? And okay, I try to drown that ego, but there are points in time where my approach to dealing with bad coworkers is, look, I'm not looking for trouble, but if you want to find trouble, and they usually do because I'm very low profile or whatever, and they come swinging, at the end of the day, you might land 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 swings, but when it's my turn, I will go out swinging, and that also creates a lot of enemies, a lot of hatred. So again, this is personal, and it's adding on top of what you said. I've created a lot of enemies personally, like a lot of them. And you know what? I don't particularly regret it, because they all had it coming for me. I never took a swing against anybody, but I delivered the ending swing when I had to. All right, and this does come at the cost of my financial freedom, but it doesn't come at the cost of my own personal sanity. So how do you draw these lines? Where do you think you should draw these lines?
well, I would say that no one can be peaceful if they're not capable of violence, right? So if you're peaceful without the capability of violence, you're just
A victim.
weak. And again, this has to do with Jordan Peterson in one of his videos that he mentioned it. So you're mentioning the part about swinging and being low profile. I think a lot of people that might confuse that as weakness, or simply put, a lot of people have never gotten punched in the face, so they have gotten away with things that one might say they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So they have a very overzealous, prideful behavior.
To me, it's mesmerizing that you can swing at somebody for a very long period of time, and once you swing back at that bully, he actually gets offended.
And you turn out to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
So it was one of the points that I wanted to mention with one of the things you said, but I think I forgot, got sidelined a bit. That a lot of people might poke the bear or the beehive, and once they get stung or attacked by the bear, suddenly it's the bear's fault.
Mm-hmm.
So I put my hand in a blazing fire, I get burned. Is it my fault or it's the fire's fault? So you see that a lot of times that people don't call out the unfair, aggressive or whatever behavior, but once someone reacts to it, Suddenly they're all on top of it. Why did you react like this? Why did you get? Which, okay, maybe the reaction might be a bit too much, but in a way,
No, look, if I'm gonna react, I'm gonna do it disproportionately, and I'm gonna make sure, and this is very Machiavellian of me, that it's gonna be the closing act. Because, as Machiavelli said it best, people are willing to forget the loss of their father over the loss of their fortune. So if you're gonna take a swing at a man, take it completely openly and finish it off before he has any ability to retaliate. So I'll give you a case in point. Had I not closed one of the companies the way I closed it, I was not going to get my pension, my private funded pension scheme, which were basically my bonuses put in and matched by the company. I would have gotten a lawsuit against me. I would have had people coming hunting me down. I mean, granted, they'll hate me for reacting, but I got everything I wanted out of it.
yeah, and people tend to forget the behavior because it's a reaction.
It is a reaction.
It's in the word. It comes after a certain action. So, for example, there's a demonstration on the streets, a valid demonstration. So, people didn't just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm gonna go do it. It's a response to something. It's the same thing. So, it really puzzles me as a person, even in a work environment. There might be, for example, a co-worker that delivers a sloppy work to you that impacts your own work, or they keep on delaying to give you some items that you need for your work. So I've faced it that I said something against it and I turned out to be the bad guy. With a calmer or with a more aggressive tone, it didn't matter both times. So it's very puzzling to me that people feel that way. They feel that they can act in whatever way you want, and suddenly once you put your own boundaries, you turn out to be the bad guy. So
How do you live with that?
just just be the bad guy. If that turns
Be
out,
bad guy.
they might call you reactive or aggressive or whatever, but they never call you a liar, right?
Yeah.
So it's very stupid as well.
I want you to repeat that because that's a very good point.
Well, in those things, people might call you a lot of things once you react or do whatever, but they don't really call you a liar. So you might be keep it PG.
Aggressive, psychopath.
Yeah, all the names in the books, but how often you called a liar? Not often. So you know what? I might be all these things, but
I'm not a liar.
I'm not a liar, and I'm not a donkey to be mistreated or do whatever. There is a breaking point. I think the older you grow, the more times you're exposed to these circumstances. Maybe the first time you're a lot more patient, but once you see this behavior again, there's a certain switch inside. That it doesn't really
Kicks off, yeah.
It kicks off. That it doesn't really. You don't really allow yourself to get exposed to that situation because you've seen this movie play again in the past, right? So.
And there's no winning that movie. I've tried different scenarios to win that movie.
It's because a big part of people claim that they don't like aggressiveness, but no one mentioned something about passive aggressive behavior that might turn you into reacting that way. So they see your response,
But not what caused it.
not what caused it, or some that might be aggressive or passive aggressive. It's very stupid for me because and it's very infuriating as well because either people are that stupid that they don't understand it, or they pretend to be, and I don't know which one is.
What do you think it is?
I think it's a combination of both, to be honest, because I think a lot of people are not necessarily naive, but they want to act like they don't understand what's going on.
So they're not really stupid, they're just acting to be stupid.
Yeah, which is evil, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's deceptive, intellectually dishonest, what we mentioned before. Yeah, and a lot of people have never gotten punched in the face, so a lot of individuals that might act that way, if from the first time they started acting like this, the response was, people might say, overwhelming, right? So, for example, that was a phone ring.
Yeah.
It's just a corporate sound. So, example, in a work environment, there's someone that tries to bully someone else. You know, if that someone else from like the first instance stands up and punches the guy in the face, people might say overwhelming, right?
Yep.
But will that other person try to do that again to another coworker? I don't think so. So.
Put it into perspective. So you think my first manager ever, that was the aforementioned fat obese girl. When she walked in all huffing and puffing and you knew it was going to be a shitty day, you just stand up and punch her.
I would say that.
Because I would love to do that. I just want to be clear. Like, I'm not pro-violence, but I would have done that. Like, probably now I would have done it more than I would have done it back then.
I would say that now, because you've been so parts of the corporate game, you might have just stood up, said, you know what, we go to the HR, I feel violated because of 20 different reasons.
Yeah.
And because there would be an immediate punishment to that response, it would be, you know, a form of training against these types of individuals. There's a lot of people that once they get a sniff of authority or a form of authority or a perceived form of authority, they lash out to whatever pent up anger or mental philosophies they have in their mind on who the enemy is.
I firmly believe that power should not be given to people that are asking for power. That's my end conclusion into all of this. Power should not be given to the people that ask for power.
I think power should not be given to people that have not been tested. Because the only way that you will be able to understand whether you deserve it, the authority or power, is you haven't been tested. There's no other way, right?
Yeah, but how can you test for that? It's not like you can promote someone to a manager for 2 months and then demote him again if you don't like him. And what about the results that take 6 months to show themselves? And what about the fact that this guy is maybe, I don't know, some ministers or ambassadors or big journalists, wink wink, son or daughter? What do you do then? Do you demote him? Do you move him across? How many times can you move him department?
That's a difficult question to answer because it assumes a perfect, not perfect world, but a world where people advance due to meritocracy and no other subject. I'm just talking purely at the who deserves power in a way, right? So whatever power or authority, if you haven't been tested, there's no real way to know. Either you ask it or not. Someone might not ask it, but it could be because they have, for example, they don't really care, but once they get a taste of it, suddenly everything comes to...
I am the alpha, I am the omega. Yeah, sure. But then how do you mitigate that? Again, the question remains, how do you mitigate that? Like, you give someone power and then you take it away from them, they're never going to be the same.
I don't have the answer. I haven't thought about it deeply, to be honest.
You give some wild, I mean, in this particular case, she got transferred to a different department and kept on causing problems and whatnot. And this was down the line once it had costed a lot of human personnel to the company. So it's very interesting. Eventually, they transitioned her out altogether, but you know, that was one case. I have ample of other cases where they ended up working in a big brand name consultancy as the alpha and the omega. So it's not, you don't always see cases where it's punished. I think the most foolish ones are punished. The most evil and non-foolish ones are not punished, unless you have something like God or life or karma come back to them and give them a son, for example.
Look, a big part of what you're mentioning though is that people that are the decision makers, that make the action or make a decision to promote an individual, don't want to do that corrective action because it will reflect badly on them, right? Because supposedly they made a decision to promote someone, and now they will have to admit that this was the wrong choice or the wrong move or the wrong whatever.
But it was the wrong move and the wrong whatever.
It was, but it doesn't want, once you do it, you're admitting failure in a way, or a mistake, or whatever you did.
Isn't it better if you admit failure and correct something that has a huger impact on you than not correcting it ever?
It could be, unless the individual that makes that decision has a very fragile ego, which a lot of times happens, right? So,
Yeah, but let's say you're a company, right? And you've taken a company from zero to hero. You're generating 10, 20 million per annum net profits, right? And you've made that decision. Doesn't it make sense for you to look at that decision and be like, okay, that decision is costing me, I don't know, out of the 20 million I'm making, it's costing me an extra 1 or 500,000. Wouldn't you accepting that you made that mistake, correcting it, and re-increasing your revenue, being far more profitable both for your ego and for yourself?
well, now you're taking a look on the financial situation there and the logical standpoint, but once you pull in the ego, it's not the same, right? So we assume that this decision was made due to careful consideration, etc., etc., etc. So having to take it back meant you made a catastrophic mistake. It could be for the ego much better to say that, you know what, once I did this decision, things turned out, she was a different person or he was a different person, whatever. But it turned out not to be that way because of the role, etc., etc. I
The
think it's-
pressure, etc.
Correct. So I think it's a part of delegating the responsibility of the choice made to the person not actually putting in the work and the effort to do so.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. For people that are going through this, because you hear a lot of people judging, for example, Gen X, the Gen X generation, which, to be fair, in the beginning, they were a very annoying generation for me too. They were people that I could not comprehend how they worked because they work very differently than what we do. But for those that are listening to this, and particularly the Gen X generation that's reacting and has a very low threshold to bullshit, are you pro or against it? Because I am very pro it.
Look, you're talking about individuals that saw what the immediate previous generation went through. They saw the promise of putting your head down, working way too hard. This doesn't exist anymore. They saw that a big part of the previous generation wasn't able to achieve it. So what's the motivation for it? So you work hard to do what? To achieve 1/10 of what your grandparents did with half the effort. I mean, doesn't make sense. And I think everyone that will be going through the same thing now would share the same sentiment. In order to devote yourself completely to something, we're talking about being hardworking and disciplined, but if you don't have the proper rewards for it, then it becomes a bit of a more slave mentality in a way, because you're exchanging what? It's not worth it. It's not worth what you're getting out of it. So I think they've started to realize it a great deal, that this is, the tides are against them. Unless something changes radically, I don't think they will change. And I agree with them in a big way.
So do I. I agree with them a lot. I mean, it was very shocking to me. Like, I could not fathom being a manager and being like, okay, to a young associate, hey, you want to work into this project? You're gonna work on this project? And she's like, no. I'm like, what? So that was my first initial reaction, and she turned out, and it was a female. She turned out to be one of my favorite associates. Across time, I've never really hated any of the employees I was responsible for. There's one or two that should have been fired, and they weren't fired for the sake of feminism, or because she was a woman, or because they interpreted her as weak or delulu, or psychological issues or whatnot. Actually, there was one, just one. But with my inferiors, right? With my superiors, there was plenty, but with my inferiors, it was just one, and the rest of them, I always had. I tried to avoid all these sort of black boxes that I went through, and it was very interesting because with Gen X, it was the first time I was dealing with them, and they were very unique in their approach. They had no problem telling you no. They had no problem not responding. They had no problem not picking up the phone or answering a question. They had no problem just completely walking away from a situation. And while it initially pissed me off a lot, but again, my relationship with them turned out to be great, and I actually admire them for what they do. I think it's worth it. They're doing the right thing.
Well, if you see someone driving a specific vehicle crashing all the time, you would avoid driving that vehicle, right? So, what I mentioned before, they saw the lack of reward or whatever that the previous generation had with a mentality of, hard work, dedication, etc. So it's a lot more valuable for them to put boundaries, and maybe to an extreme extent, rather than do the opposite. But you know what? It's fair game. I mean, a lot of companies, if they could get you to pay them to work for them, they would.
Oh, they would.
They would do it. So if there's no financial incentive, why do the extra work? And depends on the financial incentive as well. So if I'm asked to do a lot more overtime, but the pay is really bad, why do it?
Because we're a team.
Yeah, I would just prefer to have
The time.
the time, even if I don't do anything about it. I mean,
We're gonna get very philosophical into this, but in your 20s, I would have preferred the overtime. Okay, granted, I was doing it because I was building some things and I needed money, even if it was a shitty overtime. But the more I grow, like now in my 30s, if you ask me overtime or time for yourself, I'm gonna go with time for myself.
yeah, and I think I would say the same thing, but it's because I think it's because way too many times I didn't make that choice, and I saw the outcome of it. So I think unless you're building something for yourself, or for a very specific target, it could be because you want to buy something really brand new, so you do it for a limited amount of time. Unless there's something very clear, quantifiable, tangible, then it's not really worth it. Because, again, as you grow older, you see this a lot more often, but a day or an hour that passes by won't return.
No.
So if you're in your 20s, you don't really view it that way, because you have your whole life ahead of you, a lot more youthful energy, but you start to realize...
Boosting testosterone.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of...
Your vitals are
you're a lot more carefree as well.
Yeah.
So you appreciate the value of free time, and even if you don't do anything with it, right? Just because you have free time doesn't mean it's available time. You just might want to look at the ceiling, or stare at the sun, get blind or something. Yeah.
Okay, so just to conclude this first segment, ideologies and work, feminism and work. Any last words on your side?
No, not really. I think we talked a lot about it.
Well, I want to conclude this again with the way I started it from my side. That on my end and my perspective, there's no hard feelings. I do wish all these people the best. I do hope that the world is self-healing and coming back into, I'm not going to say normality, but a more balance of things. And I wholeheartedly and sincerely, and I'm never going to let go of this wish, do wish they give birth to boys. Alright, so for me that is very, very important. But for everybody out there that's has faced this situations or these type of people, it's very good for people to understand in general that they're not alone in this, that it's something that happens very often in workplaces and workspaces. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. What's very, very important is that, you know, they find a way to mitigate this. They find a way to maintain their liberty. They find a way to maintain their self-respect. They don't cower down into these behaviors. And you know, life's short and it's a one-way ride. It's nice to build a legacy and it's nice to build things, but sometimes it's just nice to have a beer with some friends or spend some time with someone close to you. That's way more important.
It's important to understand properly what's the value of the extra time you're getting. Are you getting something quantifiable? Are you getting needed experience? And weigh them so you can make the proper decision for yourself. But it's important also to keep a perspective of just because there's someone dangling a cheese.
Doesn't mean it's not rotten cheese.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Time.